Chill here with Sirius Talisman. While the moon is still in the moon hour, Mercury night, let's talk about the new moon in Taurus. The moon is now moving away from Rahu towards Saturn in Pisces. But what we're looking at right now is the chart of the new moon in Taurus, which is going to be eventful. First of all, moon 13 degrees Taurus, with opposition to Sun 13 degrees Scorpio. Venus is going to be squaring Pluto and Jupiter. Jupiter will conjoin Procyon at 25 degrees. That's the degree where Jupiter will later go retrograde. Jupiter forming a nice kite shape here with Black Moon Lilith and Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, while applying to oppose Pluto. And and Saturn. Why Saturn? Saturn. Um, and Mars will be opposing Uranus and Sedna. Mars is the ruler of the sun. Venus is the ruler of the moon. Full moons are usually a revelation, the full picture of something. And and with Mars opposing Uranus, and I said this is the time to pull the skeletons out the closet when it comes to the Mars-Uranus hard aspects or amiable aspects, synastries, and composites, because they're going to be of certain importance. Now, with that Mars ruling the Sun, opposing Uranus Sedna, in the context of that full moon with Mars ruling the Sun, is meaning that this full moon will be of a certain action with the motivation for freedom and even peace, 12 o'clock from Uranus Sedna. And Uranus Sedna, so it can kind of be like actually a desire to make a war, to make peace. There can be a topic of yes, risk when it comes to sexual boundaries violation here. Okay, so I hope it's not going to go on the trajectory of sexually violating people and then trying to make a war. If it will be very unexpected, because Uranus Sedna is an unusual take on the Sedna story. But what I think is that it would be a very, how should I say that? Mars-Uranus hard aspects can be like that article about the person that wanted to bomb a plane. They managed to get a ticket, they got on the plane, and they exploded. They sat next to the window, and they exploded with the bomb, but only they got off the plane with the power of the vacuum, and no other passengers were hurt. And so this would be the best of prediction. Okay? Um, and another thing is that there can be a topic of human trafficking involved with trying to make a peace type of move. And again, Sedna's story always reminds us that it's those that were trafficked that created the food shortages that even the most diabolical could not create. But because it's Uranus Sedna, Mars opposition, on the degree, full moon, so there's going to be a purgatory act And Mars in Jupiter sign is a big, 0 degree Jupiter sign, 0 degree Sagittarius. There can be a religious motivation to the action, big action, that it can be, fail. If it's failed army, it's a big time. It's, what I remember when Mars was in conjuncting Uranus Sedna, there was this topic about, no, not the balloon. The balloon was Mercury Mars, but the actual a case where some cheap drone was bickering at NATO allies' territory, and NATO had to contemplate whether to send a Patriot or not, and then that dumb fuckery thing didn't explode and fell down completely on a civil building. And I'm like, well, Mars is in conjuncting Uranus Sedna, in conjuncting Saturn Neptune, squaring Pluto. That's an expected thing. And people are like, oh, there goes the 5%. So, um, but this is, but this is an opposition. So Mars is sextiling Pluto, sextiling Neptune, Saturn, and opposes Uranus, um, which is definitely a lunation that I was worried about when I did in November. Okay, now if there is so the things that are happening, their intention is to purge something. Now, if their intention is so much so as to try to purge freedom, they will end up being enslaved to reinstating even bigger freedom. Okay, and think about the Second World War and Germany paying Shilumim to reinstate gender equity in the closest to constitutional gender equity, full rights of voting to from the get-go, in the shape of the state of Israel. Now, everything that we have wrong to say about Israel is right, but that was kind of like the creme de la creme of countries in 1948, as much as we don't like to discuss that, which is also why it's difficult to take Israel down. I mean, it's not the only country supported by the RNRs, okay? And and to address Israel, people would need to address their own shadows with the Spica ascendant that pertains to the jurisdiction, and the midheaven Procyon. It's kind of like to take down apartheid. They needed Mandela, and even within his own society, Mandela was controversial because he was taking down bloodline segregation, also from the pre-apartheid and pre-colonialism era. Okay? Now, this lunation is gonna play on that trajectory of Procyon. And it's going to pinpoint the topic of religious freedom. But to ensure religious freedom, okay, there would be a consideration of, if the lower astral is about sacrificing living to the lower astral, then how can we talk about religious freedom? And we've been seeing that coming up with Somalia, abolishing child weddings, and basically, trying to abolish pedophilia and running into claims about Islamophobia. I don't currently have the chart of Somalia on the spot, but okay, but that is kind of, you know, reconsidering freedom of religion, being 12 o'clock from Uranus Sedna, or from the digitized human trafficking, because Uranus is digitized, Sedna is dark occult used to traffic, and Gemini is children or people that are citizens of cities. Um, Something along this line. Now the lunation is on this Taurus Scorpio axis, which means oils will be involved, land would be involved, leaders would be involved, and people will be involved. There is a kite shape of transformation in the background. There are two bisextiles that are very protective, but what they are protective of is the conflict between Mars and Uranus. And sometimes the preservation of conflict is necessary to an active discourse, particularly of a philosophical religion one. Mars is acting for a cohesion of religion. Okay, Jupiter, cohesion. And it's 12 o'clock from Uranus Sedna, which remind us that feeding people to the lower astral is not a religion. Okay. Neither is it culture. In fact, those that do that have their entire cities, villages, tribes, religions and cultures going hungry. Okay, and that's and it kind of interferes with absorption of minerals, and this is where Mars that wants to create philosophical unity or religious unity is running into a rebellion from Sedna. It can also be a desire to create a certain cohesion, running into, like as happened in Somalia, where the Islamic people that were doing the child weddings there um, basically revolted and upturned the decision to abolish pedophilia in Somalia. Okay, now that doesn't paint their Islam in a nice light, and that is just one study case. So we could have kind of like the full picture, but I don't think we will be discussing one any singular religion, more like the topic of one world religion. Now, Mars is also ruling Lilith, and there is an old issue that Mars addresses here, but definitely anything we can think about as Sagittarian, religion, evangelism, um, okay, philosophy, taking action upon these, and with Jupiter Procyon, the desire to be favored. Who are we favored by? What does it mean when there is a conflict around the religion that someone is favored by? Um, Psychic protection as well, passion, but also kind of temper tantrums that can be big with this one. Um, Benevolent intention that doesn't always encounter benevolent spirits, so to speak. Um, Venus squaring the nodes, Venus squaring Pluto and Jupiter. Venus ruling the moon here, at the final degrees of Libra squaring Pluto. So Venus is now approaching the point where Mars was with the Patriot fiasco. um, and that means that um, anything Venusian, art, diplomatic relations, okay, um, values, women or the feminine, not the best time to do a beauty procedure, will encounter a crisis, and very likely is the things that are revealed in a way that creates crisis or through a crisis. um, that is also crisis with the very procyon. And it's going to be a big crisis of values, reevaluation. Um, okay, Venus would be opposing Chiron, still releasing from opposition to Chiron Aries, in conjuncting Saturn Neptune, in conjuncting Uranus, squaring Pluto, kind of like where, she's going to be in the troubles Mars was, but with Venus. Um, More to say about that. The moon in Taurus is not uncomfy. It also receives a lovely, um, you know, the fact that the moon and Venus are in their home sign are going to give us some sort of nervous system resilience during this time. Okay, Venus is in her home sign, dealing with this crisis. Some people even say that in the crisis between Pluto and Venus, Venus has more power. I don't know, but definitely Venus in her home sign in Libra, the decan that can denote of certain extremism regarding to the value or the issue at hand. Um, she might even voice her voice in a way that is standing to the conflict, and it's going to be a big issue, okay? And because she is squaring the ruler of Mars, she's kind of squaring indirectly Mars. And this is where there's a big discussion going on between Venus and Mars indirectly through Jupiter. It reminds me of, let's say people date and somebody says, what do you think about sex before marriage? And one replies, well, people need to know if they're sexually compatible. And the setting of the question was, um, okay, trying to create one thing, perhaps associated with so much so on the border of trafficking, trying to sweeten that through discussion of supposed beliefs. Well, the answer was authentic and sovereign, talking about, well, to have a successful relationship, people need to have sexual compatibility, where the notion of sexual sovereignty was not even implied by that which asked the question. And so we have this indirect conflict that we'll also see on a mundane level and in diplomatic relations during supposed peace talks that can become explosive. Definitely, Venus and Mars don't quite understand one another here. Okay? Mars, for example, wants to haggle something that Venus sees as a fixed value. Not by the merit. I mean, Libra is not fixed, but the moon is fixed, and Libra is extremism. So Venus can act in extremist mode because the value that she's representing regarding the people or the moon is a fixed value. And Mars might try to haggle where is a fixed value market, and that can be a religious cultural misunderstanding involved in that situation, and that can even be where, okay, and that can even be what is revealed, that there was a misunderstanding regarding where Venus stands here. And Venus in Libra wants equal rights, equal fortune. Okay, it's not the Venus that one can write out. Okay, of the trade, of participation in trade, voting, and so on. And if that is attempted, Venus might extremely voice her voice in a way that whatever was asked, okay, by this Mars that rules over Aries, Chiron, okay, and Lilith, um, in the sign, okay, there's definitely certain things where the freedom that Mars asks might be more to traffic rather than, and again, it's not in all scenarios, but it might be more the freedom to traffic rather than actually giving women equal rights. And this is something that Venus will undoubtedly reveal, or even be exposed to, following the actions that Mars takes. So if there was a thought that those values are not fixed, we remind us that the moon here is in a fixed sign, and there is a fixed value regarding nourishment, full reveal that a certain value is fixed by an extreme voicing of that value. Now, this is a decan of Taurus that has to do with the Austin calls it the Yoni Lingam decan. I call it the will and consent decan. So anybody, including women sex workers, that thought to shake the value of Venus regarding willing consent in an embodied Taurus sense, may run into extreme voicing out, okay, of the importance of, and Venus here is not going to phrase it as sexual sovereignty, but rather as the importance of willing consent, to fertility, to okay, and we're still Libra, so Venus is going to say, well, it actually harms the ability to have wealth because it is violating a bodily boundary around sensuality that is also connected with manifesting peace and abundance. So those are going to be Venus language type of trajectories She's going to be quite diplomatic, but extremely voicing her opinion. And as far as she's concerned, the women that are, all along the line of violating that willing consent are war criminals. Okay, it will still speak judiciary language, um, liberal language, fairness, equity, rationale. Okay, she hasn't gone Scorpio yet. Okay, um, it probably will be addressing femicide topics as well here. The Nazi ideologies behind actions might be confronted, but Venus is in Libra. I have Mercury in Aries, so it's very difficult for me to um, to tap into Venus Libra, because Venus is in Libra is about voicing our own voice elegantly, classically. Okay, with class. If I think about Libra women, I think about, there was a case where a lady that was a supermodel, and she was Arabic Israeli. Now, she was half Russian from St. Petersburg, and she went to the gym, and she wrote on her Instagram that some Arabic guy began to talk with his friend in Arabic about her butt, okay? And when she was exercising, and she just classically, filled with class, asked him how is his day doing in Arabic and shamed him, okay? Absolutely antithetical to me. It's like, I would literally go like, and then you're surprised you're genocided. And go about my day thinking that we've sorted this issue out, and they probably understood my rationale. Okay, the Libra operates differently. So, okay, think about Mercury. I mean, I can't say that not all Mercury Libras. Let's say the Uranus Venuses with Plutos don't represent all of them that well. um, yeah. But at the same time, um, Venus in Libra is going to have that type of class. Okay, that type of saying marhaban, or to the people that were bullying, aggressive, and so on, and juxtaposing the elegance of Venus and her poise in the face of the barbaric, not Mercury Aries type of thing. Okay, not Mercury Aries type of interaction. Um, but it will be beyond obvious that Venus has stated her point. Okay, like when the Libras talk, they do talk, and and it's going to be from the depth of the deep, and they've intellectually analyzed everything. Um, and here Libra is advocating for that moon in Taurus. And what that moon in Taurus wants is, an actual orgasm, like that type of thing. Doesn't work with trafficking agendas, doesn't work with Nazi ideologies. Um, and it can even be the scientific discernment. Whenever something is in Libra, it's the kidneys. It's like, well, it's water, but when people do ritual abuse, yeah, that comes off as piss, because that's what comes out of like the residues of the kidneys when it's not like willing consent. So Libras can be like that, okay? Don't get me don't get me wrong. Libras can be like that, um, and that's going to be really confronting any type of trajectory and action that still needs to be deprogrammed, but it's not going to be with this Aryan, Martian qualities, more with elegance, with class, with explaining a rationale, with stating one's values and boundaries. And with this lunation, it's going to be a big megalithic revelation, okay, with that square to Jupiter, that the values we thought are not fixed are indeed fixed, particularly pertaining fertility, embodiment, the tantric orgasm, willing consent as important to sensuality, to abundance, and even to fair trade. Okay, this is a very elegant type of Venusian expression here. Um, and those that thought to engineer around that, to power abuse around that, be them women or men. Okay, again, we have this opposition to Uranus, regardless of sexual orientation, that are going to set that boundary straight, even if they're gay. Okay, so that so Mars here, unless Mars is authentically benevolent, um, if in the best of cases where Mars is authentically benevolent, we are going to have a confusion of the languages, and it can also mean that the beliefs of Mars, with this one, there are new beliefs following that lunation, rejuvenation of the beliefs. Okay, Jupiter applying to oppose Pluto is rejuvenation of our beliefs around peace. Um, and this is a more Neptunian kind of decan of Scorpio that um, can be very psychic. And so Mars intuition, albeit being deeply psychic, does not coincide with the fixed values of Venus. And in the best of cases, we can have like an authentic discussion around those things. But there is still confusion regarding the ability to establish an understanding between Venus and Mars. Okay, they might not quite get where is one coming from. And one thing to be aware of is abundance of triggers to both of them. One around, freedom of belief, and one around, you know, the embodiment of the embodiment of the Venusian value of willing consent. Okay, I'm trying to say it without sexual sovereignty, because sexual sovereignty is the wrong term for this Venus, from the aspect that Venus is arriving from, and it's very difficult to phrase it because my Mercury is like in the sovereignty sign. Okay, so this is where it's gonna be like, well, that is important for the emotional well-being, for the fifth vital sign, for okay, think about Moon Taurus, the land, the people, the soil, the willing consent, and how they correlate. Historic of judiciary perceptions, okay, leading up to the kind of like Venus Libra being very intellectual and having to intellectually explain a very embodied type of fixed value of willing consent that is non-negotiable, and it's going to probably look like, since so and so women have been arguing that we're sick of fighting for a basic, you kind of something like that, um, that is troubled because it's squaring Pluto, in conjuncting Saturn, Neptune, in conjuncting Uranus. So Venus words might be creating, there might even be a mishap around Venus words, okay? Something that is racially insensitive or something that is gender insensitive. Um, that comes out, albeit the desire of Venus to be understood, absolutely no longer people pleasing, and still classy. And, you know, I have a couple of things in mind that could be around that. You think about the fact that white women that didn't know about the gap between white women getting the right to vote and black women getting the right to vote, thinking that basically talking about intersectionality in feminism is purposefully creating division. And I think that that can be something along this line of argument that Venus is going to instill into her argument. It can be like a complete wrong historical data or some sort of that trajectory. This is what I see for the full moon in Taurus. Venus is squaring Pluto. Mars is sextiling Pluto. Um, and Venus doesn't receive a benefic aspect. So we running the risk of Mars kind of like taking an action that is not authorized by that Venus, and then being 12 o'clock from explosion, Sedna style. So now, okay, because Mars, and we have to, and each and every one of us can play both the Mars and the Venus role, so we have to remind ourselves that Mars is going to get the go for it, you're protected, go for it, and then what they go for is a 12 o'clock confrontation with Sedna and Uranus blended into one. And this is, okay, this can be, okay, I learned first about the story of Ghuna, and there is a water spring in Iceland that's called the Ghuna, I think, water spring, waterfall. And the story of Ghuna was such, according to the tale that as I heard it on Facebook, so, but this was the story of Ghuna. She had no money to pay the landlord. And the landlord says, no problem, I will take the pot that you cook with. And he took that, and she couldn't cook. And then she said she will starve and hunger strike until the landlord returned her pot. And he didn't, so she died of hunger. But then this is usually where mythical stories begin, not end. She hunted him down, brutally murdered him, and brutally murdered the entire village. If that rings kind of like a Sedna story to you, then I don't know if you're imagining or not, but this is kind of like the story of Ghuna. And then people had to bind Guna's spirit into the water, the warm springs, um, to keep the entire village from being slaughtered by the unhoused woman that was expected to probably offer something more to her landlord when she didn't even have food, and she preferred to die of hunger, which slaughtered the entire village. Okay, it's kind of like another story that has a theme that's associated with the Sedna story, reminding everyone, okay, um, so yeah, there may be a Guna spirit in Arad City. um, when a woman is not safe and free, there will be disaster after disaster. And here Mars gets the, it's kind of like, it can even be Mars playing like the landlord that Pluto say, come on, don't be a loser, don't be this, ask for something. And Jupiter says, well, she'll have to appease, she'll have to contribute her own this. And then he meets Guna. And she takes him down with Pluto, with Jupiter, with the village, with the city, with everyone. Okay? And Mars was kind of like this new to that type of trade, not really knowing. Everybody's like, come on, go for that. Then it's 12 o'clock from Uranus Sedna, and that was not what Mars expected. Then he tries to explain his situation to Venus, and Venus has a big disagreement, and she says, your desire to have, a compensation for the fact that your tenant cannot pay, and so on, or your desire for having, sex is okay desire, okay? It's not a bad thing to want sex, but when you go by the belief that somebody owes you sex, okay, because it's a belief thing, then what it does is erectile dysfunction. In the best of cases, you basically not sensually drawing the, the fluids moon that are important for intercourse. Thereby, you might experience the lady as hysterical, or a ghost that haunts you and the rest of the village down. And it is impossible to argue with the fact that she's right. Um, but Mars here can definitely try to F around and find out. Yet there is a major component of, how do I say that, supporting Mars here, okay? And Jupiter is almost sextile in Uranus, so but it can also be an unintentional form of, saying to Mars, like, oh, I'm the landlord, my tenant did not pay rent, should I ask for something more, I don't know, or for something different to compensate? With both Pluto and Jupiter saying, yeah, that's reasonable, not necessarily realizing that he meant like something else. And then Uranus said, now being that tenet, saying, I ran into a situation where the money was coming in as usual, then they tried to traffic me. Of course I would abrupt any type of funneling of any energy and spirit and matter towards traffickers, it would only use to traffic children and so on. And Pluto and Jupiter's like, of course, you did the right thing. Rebel. Don't finance traffickers. You could catch karma for that. Okay, because Saturn is also sextiling. Okay, and not really knowing who that landlord and that tenant were the people that they gave separate advices to, and then they collide. Okay, so Mars is going to go to Pluto and Jupiter. It's like, what happened? I have this crazy tenant. This crazy tenant is so crazy. They, I don't know what happened to them. They begin to hunt down. They begin to down. It's like, okay, you need to set boundaries. You need to not let people, do witchcraft on you. And then with Human Sedna, okay, it was like, of course. You need to use, you see, a cult is meant to do liberation. They were telling people, not even realizing it's still the same argument, that they're benefically and even unconsciously given advices to remediate the conflict, inflaming it even more. And here I cannot attribute malevolence or intentional malevolence necessarily. Okay, it's not the Aries energy. It's not somebody trying to purposefully create chaos. It's an attempt to bridge something that can only be bridged by the notion that under any circumstances, trafficking people is not okay. And is considered a crime against humanity even in times of peace. Now, the fact that our countries are founded upon that um, is probably going to be fully revealed. Yes, Mars, Neptune, there is a due diligence involved. Um, it can be a due diligence on a religious institution, on a hospital or medical institution. Um, or mass death that somehow remediates this conflict. Yeah, I mean, you never know. It's Saturn Neptune. It's like, oh, how do we get out of this? Oh, looky here, genocide. Um, um, countries been doing that as well, consolidation for centuries. Anyway, Venus situation here is problematic to say the least. And the ruler of Uranus Sedna is still kind of conjoining Mars in Jupiter's sign, creating even more confusion. Um, and it can be a eureka solution to a conflict that is standing in conflict with itself. Okay? So that's the full moon. Let's go see what the other lunation is about. November 20, new moon in Scorpio. Yes, probably Saturn hour. I feel it's Saturn hour. The new moon in Scorpio is within a kite shape and conjoining black moon Lilith. So this is going to be kind of an opposite perspective, and yes, we're midway into Saturn hour. But let's talk about that because this new moon in Scorpio will be 28 degrees Scorpio with Lilith 26 degrees Scorpio, and this is opposition to Uranus from Taurus. Still conjoining Sedna, but from Taurus. Venus is in Scorpio and Mars is 11 degrees Sag. This is a new moon. It is quite an explosive one. It's quite an explosive new moon. Explosive action to do with religion. There can be some sort of demonic activity or spiritual warfare with this one, or new beginning regarding an old topic, but it's an explosive one. Mercury is retrograde conjoining that new moon when Mercury was in 28 degrees Scorpio. Mercury retrograde, Sun Moon, Black Moon Lilith, Mars ruling over all of them, and Venus, which is ruling over Uranus, is quite explosive. It's kind of a new old topic. Again, Lilith, sexual sovereignty, there can be a topic of incubus and succubus. Okay, kind of a psyop regarding that. Mars is a very explosive degree. It's a big explosion around religion. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You know that Islam, they're called the Islam, the religion of peace? Because it's a big explosion, Mars in Jupiter sign, 11-degree explosion, some sort of philosophical religion action. What religion? Jupiter Procyon, religion of peace. Peace, okay, Procyon, religion, Jupiter, religion of peace considered to be Islam, which is associated with the moon. And there's going to be an old issue around sexual sovereignty there. With Mercury, it can be child weddings. Somalia, I need your natal chart. Wait a second. Shout out to Modi because Modi has been exposing many topics to do with Somalia. So Somalia, natal chart. First of July, but 1960. 1960. Um, Saturn midheaven conjunction in its home sign Capricorn. Lilith 22 degrees Cancer. Venus 11 degrees Cancer with the Sun. Mars in Taurus. Neptune Scorpio ascendant 18 degrees Aries. Yeah. It is Rahu return. It's Rahu reversal for Somalia. okay, which is why we see the upheavals. Mercury 29 degree Cancer, Moon 24 degrees Virgo. There can be destruction of cities in Somalia, of housing in cities, because um, because of the topic of the children, okay, the pedophilia, okay. Um, the eclipse regarding that has already been, so this can be the shade of that eclipse. It's regarding the eclipse, not the particular lunation. Lunation is in the ninth house for Somalia. The ruler is the ninth house. The lunation is the eighth house for Somalia. And third house, there can be civil war with neighboring countries regarding that, or an on-break of one. Jupiter 27 degrees close to the galactic center, retrograde. Uranus 18 degrees Leo. Pluto Virgo. We will hear about Somalia, that's for sure, with this eclipse cycle. But there's, regardless of Somalia, there are going to be, I think, even in the US, because it's given explosion regarding the religion of peace. Is basically what I was. No, there's some. What? It's a new moon. So Jupiter is retrograde. What, on a like an international mundane level? I don't know. Hmm? Now I'm thinking. Hmm. Hmm. Wait. Intrusion. Wait a second. It's the first house for United States. I don't know. Okay. If there's a false flag planned, remember the opposition to Uranus. Just, and it's Uranus said now. That's all I can say about that. Um, I don't know. Mm, 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 mm. Mm. Oh, okay. Um, Okay. This might be. There can be suicide bombers. Okay.